the 6th episode of Capacity Building Stories, a podcast brought to you by the Paris Migrant Capacity Buildings Network, or PCCB Network for short. We bring you the wealth of knowledge and experiences from network members to transform their capacity building efforts into valuable learning opportunities to drive more impactful climate action. I'm your host, Eva Costas, and today we delve into the complex intersection of climate change, migration, gender, and capacity building. As the global climate crisis intensifies, so does the urgency to understand its profound impact on human displacement, particularly among vulnerable populations. Join us as we explore the capacity building efforts led by women on climate migration and refugee advocacy by learning about the work of our PCCB Network member, SEEK, the Feminist Research to Response Network. Hear from personal experiences and discover how they mobilize communities, enhance resilience, and catalyze change. So let's jump right in. I would like to warmly welcome both of our guests today, Umbreen Salim, founder and managing director of SEEK, and Pia Valentina Revello Cisneros, independent consultant of the Center for Environmental Peace. But I would like to give the floor to both of you just to introduce yourself in your own words. So Umbreen, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the invitation, Eva, and thank you PCCB for providing the opportunity to share our views. My name is Umbreen Salim. I work as a researcher. I'm a decolonial feminist, a migrant woman, and the founder of SEEK Feminist Network. But more so, I'm passionate about environment and nature. I'm a climate activist in a way that I advocate to let nature be and follow a do no harm approach. So I strongly believe, and I always advocate, that human rights approach is the only way towards climate justice.
Wonderful. Thank you. Very much welcome to the episode. Now, Pia, over to you.
Oh, great. Thank you, Eva, and everybody for bringing us this full space where we can share our expertise and also life experiences. And so I'm so glad to be here. Well, my name is Pia, and also I'm human rights defender, environmental defender, and also I advocate for the rights of the nature as a part of our human rights. So yes, I'm the founder of an NGO. The name is SABANA. It's a social and environmental organization. Also, I'm focused for working with the Indigenous communities and working in a specific area of environmental conflict. So I believe if we all work together and we raise awareness, we can contribute for the well-being of all the humanity.
Wonderful. Thank you both again, and we can't wait to hear more about it as the episode unfolds. But just to, again, bring our listeners back to the context of the episode, looking at climate migration. I think it's clear that climate impacts are strongly affecting populations of refugees, asylum seekers, internally displaced people, but also their host communities. And climate migration is only expected to surge in the coming decades as the impacts of climate change only get worse, really. But just to provide some numbers, and I know both of you come with numbers as well, for listeners to understand the gravity of the situation and the scope. According to the Institute for Economics and Peace, 1.2 billion people could be displaced globally by 2050 due to climate change and natural disasters. So this is to really understand the magnitude of the issue and all the people that will be affected by it. But I'd like to understand, or for those that may not necessarily know about the link of climate change and migration, how are these two connected, Umbreen?
Migration caused by climate change is increasing by day, where climate change refers to long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns. That can be natural, but since the 1800s, human activities have been the main driver of climate change. And climate-induced migration is a movement pattern caused by the effects of these climate-related disasters, including droughts leading to a food and farming crisis. Climate-induced displacement often takes place within countries, but also causes displaced populations to cross borders, particularly in pursuit of livable environment and livelihoods. This climate-induced displacement and migration involve two different dimensions. First, the cause dimension, for example, climate-induced disaster events and their residual impacts. And secondly, the consequence dimension, for example, socioeconomic deprivation and violation of human rights in particular. According to the Internal Displacement Monitoring Center, climate disasters led to some 32.6 million people becoming displaced in 2022, affecting all inhabited continents. So, this estimated number of people displaced by impacts of climate change varies greatly and ranging from 100 million to 1 billion people by 2050. And by 2050, climate change will push up to 158 million more women and girls into poverty and lead to 236 million more women into hunger. This climate crisis fuels escalating conflict and forced migration in a context of exclusionary, anti-rights, political rhetoric targeting women, and in particular refugees and other marginalized groups. Also, I'd like to highlight that it is estimated that 80% of people displaced by climate change are women, according to the UN Environment, which is around 55% compared to 45%. In this way, it is very important to understand the relationship, the nexus between climate change and migration. But once it comes to migration, refugees comprise a significant category that we need to talk a little bit more about.
Wonderful. No, thank you very much for that, Umbreen. And indeed, especially when it comes to climate refugees, it's a term that we often hear a lot about. But and the both of you will probably know this better, but there's a lack of consensus on what the definition really entails because it is not a legal term as such. So Pia, please, I'd love to hear from you more about what climate refugees, how that would be how that could be defined.
Well, this is a really nice question that we hopefully get a little bit more in details in the further times, because while the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change recognized the significance of addressing the climate migration, there is currently no binding legal framework for protecting environmental migrants. So the integration of the environmental migration into the international refugee law and existing protection framework could be a crucial or critical challenge that needs to be addressed in an integrative way. So this approach will provide maybe essential protection for vulnerable groups and also including as well women, because the challenges we are facing, it seems to be deeper in the context of the climate change, but also we have a forced displacement for any kind of instability. For example, addressing the environmental piece is too important to recognize also impact of the conflict related to the environment, and this of course is one of the roots cause of the forced displacement and the maybe migration and many other issues that can affect from a gender perspective, as a discrimination, limited participation in decision making, gender-based violence, and influence of the cultural norms that of course are adding layers of the problems that we already faced from long ago.
Both of you already do tap on how most of people that are displaced by climate change are women. So I'd like to delve deeper into both of you of your experiences and how gender fills into the climate and migration nexus by learning a little bit about what are some of the challenges and hardships that some of you may have experienced, but then also that that female migrants and refugees has faced in the context of climate change, and how can some of these hardships be translated into capacity gaps and needs for female migrants and refugees?
Thank you, Eva, for highlighting this very important aspect about migrants and refugees, and in particular, climate change-induced displaced women. Female migrants and refugees are often positioned at the intersection of multiple vulnerabilities, facing unique challenges in climate dialogues. Despite constituting a significant proportion of climate refugees, as high as 80% according to UN data, their voices and perspectives are not adequately represented in decision-making processes related to climate change. And this lack of representation hinders the development of comprehensive and inclusive climate policies that address the specific needs and experiences of female migrants and refugees. So, whereby women play a crucial role in environmental justice movements. For example, the Chipko movement in India, where women were saving the environment by saving the trees. They hugged the trees to save them. and thereby playing a crucial role in safeguarding sustainability and actively resisting the detrimental aspects of modern industrial practices causing climate change. Research indicates that countries with more female politicians tend to pass more ambitious climate policies, as highlighted in a special event at COP26 Unit Climate Change Conference. This correlation is not merely coincidental, as other studies have shown that female representation in national parliaments lead to the adoption of more stringent climate change policies, even after considering factors that are, taken more important, like the GDP per capita, the education level, or maybe the political orientation. So, women's role and female representation in national parliaments, of course, matters in decision making about climate change. In the same way, I would like to highlight that Indigenous women are also at the forefront of championing climate justice. For example, Mama Baun and the Indigenous Molo people of Indonesia's Timor Island, some of the groups that we have been talking with recently, they have been facing challenges from resource extraction industries, including violence and intimidation. And these women have organized protests and formed advocacy groups such as POKIA and, like I mentioned, the Chipko movement in India, to protect their ecosystems and traditional ways of life. Their resilience and determination showcases the vital role that Indigenous women play in advocating for environmental sustainability and community resilience. Also, I would like to share and highlight that women environmental defenders often face violence and threats while fighting against ecological injustices. I recently reading a study exploring cases where women environmental defenders lost their lives in the context of violence by industrial groups. Supporting and empowering these women environmental defenders is crucial for creating more just and sustainable world where women's voices are heard and valued in environmental decision making.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that, Umbreen. And we'll definitely go back to ask for those examples from your side. And I think you rightly said so. Climate migration is a very complex issue. And I love how we started off the question as looking at the challenges that women, and more specifically, I love how you really tap into Indigenous women face, but then turning that coin around and really understanding that female climate migrants and refugees and Indigenous women play a crucial role in advocating for the rights and interests of their communities to promote resilience and adaptation. But beyond that, what you mentioned as well is that beyond ensuring that their voices and experiences are heard, the importance of really integrating these into policy discussions and decision-making processes. But before we explore this lens, I'd love to hear from you, Pia, if you have any other, especially, now that you've mentioned the challenges, and given that this is podcast by the PCCB Network and about capacity building, how would capacity building fill some of these gaps and challenges that climate migrants and refugee advocates might face? But I'd love for you as well, Pia, to reflect on your experience, or maybe add to some of the challenges that Umbreen has already mentioned.
Yeah, we'd love to address some cases that are really remarkable from the Indigenous communities, because the women are also working to keep their culture that is deep connected to the nature, and they are the first frontline defenders in the climate change chain. So there are many wonderful group of women that thrive inside their communities to also keep their culture, and this is really important because they are deep connected to the area where they are living, and mostly they are the places where the conflicts take place. So there is a woman in the Amazonie that she has a project and program that be co-built with the Indigenous communities in order to receive people from abroad. So they are starting to build different projects in different part of the communities. There are about 21 or 20, up to 27 different Indigenous groups that they are receiving travelers from other, and they are offer insight from their culture. So it's a life experience from the people that coming from different parts to live a little bit with them and to exchange part of the culture. And this is really embrace the power of the Indigenous community and their capabilities to overcome all the currently hard situation they have to face, because also from one side there is a climate adaptation, and from the other hand there are a lot of impact from outside, from other, let's say, part of the societies, and of course the implementation of many, I don't know how to say it for not being specific, because there are many different part of problems that they have to face. But for the extractivism, for example, there's a lot of things they have to face as a frontline defender. So they are trying to bring also solutions that come from those areas, and this is for me is really brave.
Absolutely. Extremely brave and inspiring from our side. And I love how you already provided these examples of these solutions that are coming from these communities, from the ground, and that are really led by them, essentially led by them and for them. And I'm wondering, Umbreen, if you could, given that we've heard from Pia that these solutions and these case studies exist, how, especially when it comes to capacity building efforts that are developed by these communities or cater for these communities, how can we make sure that they are gender sensitive and that they really place these communities, or that really integrate these communities on these efforts to essentially empower female migrants and refugees?
Thank you, Eva. Gender sensitive climate strategies I think, is one of the very crucial aspects of providing not only space but also opportunity for equality and inclusion of women. Gender sensitive climate strategies in this way are important for empowering female migrants and refugees, but also for achieving broader environmental and societal goals. According to the latest research from IUCN, only 16% of ministers in environment related ministries are women across the world. This highlights a significant gender gap in environmental leadership positions. And this lack of gender parity in leadership roles not only hinders women's empowerment, but also represents a missed opportunity for environmental outcomes. Studies have shown that gender equality, gender sensitive climate strategies, and women empowerment in environmental work lead to improved economic outcomes such as greater GDP, but also higher crop production. And more so, gender equality in environmental policy making necessitates for the preservation, ecosystem conservation, and higher reduction of, for example, CO2 emissions. However, advancement in women's leadership have slowed down. And at the current trend, it will take 162 years to reach parity in environmental leadership, according to the World Economic Forum estimates of 2023. Here, I would like to highlight that gender blind policies not only perpetuate inequality, but also increase the risk of women experiencing gender based violence and contribute to the failure of environmental initiatives. Therefore, integrating gender perspective, gender sensitive into the strategies and making gender sensitive strategies is imperative. Women's leadership in this way in environmental decision making is also crucial for empowering them as agents of change and improving environmental, health, and socioeconomic outcomes. That is why at SEEK, we advocate for feminist leadership and sustainable integration of women and women's perspectives within climate change discourse. We emphasize the importance of gender responsive approaches in achieving environmental and in particular social justice goals. I'd like to say something about capacity building. I thought that I missed earlier on that.
Please, no, absolutely. I'd love for you to reflect on the capacity building efforts that SEEK is leading, but also how can capacity building efforts as well integrate these gender sensitive approaches to essentially address the needs and priorities of female migrants and refugees?
Capacity building, plays a pivotal role in enhancing the effectiveness of solutions, projects, collaborations, and likewise that are aimed at supporting migrants and refugees, and in particular, female migrants and refugees affected by climate change. By investing in capacity building initiatives, We can empower individuals and communities to address these challenges themselves, and in this way, it can be addressed more effectively, but also more sustainably. And in this way, one key aspect of capacity building is skill development, providing information and educational opportunities tailored to the needs of migrants and refugee communities, and equip them with the knowledge and tools necessary to adapt to climate related challenges, for example, in the host societies. Because migrants and refugees come from a different society, a different context, having different knowledges, having different practices. But once they come to the host countries, they face a different set of challenges, and hence their capacities need to be built and they need to be supported for that accordingly. Then I would like to also highlight that knowledge sharing is another crucial component of capacity building. Creating platforms for sharing experiences, best practices, innovative solutions among migrant and refugee communities, but also host communities, fosters collaboration and mutual learning. And this is what we always support and work with the groups at SEEK, because it enables communities to leverage local knowledge and traditional practices, integrated them with modern techniques to develop context-specific climate adaptation strategies. I'd also like to highlight that empowerment as an overarching goal of capacity building effort also promotes inclusivity and ensures that climate responses are tailored to the needs and priorities of those most affected. For example, some of the migrants and refugees that we work with here at SEEK have highlighted the change in climate. They have a very hot climate as compared to the climate here in the Netherlands. And they have felt how they need to deal with it, how they need to manage it, but also at points they need some capacity building in managing different aspects of it. For example, the storage of food, for example, recycling. In this way, the capacity building needs of migrants and refugees differ from the capacity building needs of the host community members, because the refugees and migrants are not used to certain ways of doing things, certain ways of being, and they have to learn. But overall capacity building, I would say, is about acquiring technical skills and fostering empowerment, resilience, and community ownership of the solutions, as it plays a transformative role in enhancing the effectiveness of climate adaptation and mitigation efforts, ensuring that migrants and refugees are active participants and beneficiaries of sustainable development initiatives. In this way, I have seen in my work with some groups that they are very receptive and very proactive to new capacity building initiatives on adaptation, but also they show resilience in many ways.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much, Umbreen, for those insights. And rightfully so, a lot of them resonate with our work at the subdivision. And especially given that, like you mentioned as well, capacity building is not a one-size-fits-all approach. And especially when we're talking about migrants and refugees, they come from a diversity of identities, background, experiences. And of course, they will face different challenges and they will have different priorities. But also, I love how you touched upon the host community itself and how we need capacity building for host communities as well to be able to support and integrate these migrants and refugees. And speaking of capacity building at the host communities as well, going back to looking at the other side of the coin, it's also very necessary to build the capacities of policymakers. So based on your experience and your work, how can female climate migrants and refugee advocates be part of the decision-making processes, and how can policymakers and host communities provide this enabling environment? Because we can build the capacities at the individual level, but then when it comes to systemic capacity building, how can that happen, especially when it comes to policymaking?
It's a big question. And I would say that female, you mentioned climate migrants and refugee advocates, how they can partake in decision making in different ways, and how policymakers can provide enabling environment. we have worked, at SEEK, we have worked at this crucial participation in our different initiatives. Right now, I'd like to say that there are more than one ways to do that, including female climate migrants and refugees in decision-making processes is crucial for several reasons. And this is backed by compelling data and insights. For example, the IUCN's latest research highlights the significant underrepresentation of women in environmental leadership roles. So in this way, I would say that although that these studies and reports from organizations like UN Environment and UN emphasize the importance of gender equality to achieve sustainable development and better environmental outcomes, it has to be linked to better ecosystem conservation and protection. For example, a report by UN Environment showcases that gender responsive climate policies can lead to 20 to 30% increase in project effectiveness. In this way, women and men play different roles in the environment, with women often being gatherers and managers of natural resources. Their unique knowledge, skills, experiences contribute significantly to sustainable development efforts. Policymakers play a crucial role in providing this enabling environment for effective engagement of female climate migrants and refugees in the decision-making processes. And I would say that this includes, first of all, creating platforms for meaningful participation, then providing trainings and capacity building opportunities, and adapting policies prioritizing gender responsive approaches in climate action plans. Overall, the benefits of inclusive decision making extended beyond gender equality. They lead to more holistic, equitable, and sustainable solutions that benefit society as a whole. You will say, how can we do this in reality? How would that look like in real life? Well, this is possible through engagement with civil society, through engagement with NGOs, women groups, and by inclusion of women, not just a symbolic representation, but equality in decision making and processes, and by providing required resources. First, the women groups, the NGOs, the civil society can be a connection between policymakers and advocates, activists, and effectees of climate change. So the policymakers need to involve connections to connect to the civil society and women groups. And then secondly, providing equal opportunities, but also resources is very important.
Yes, Umbreen, it's really important what you said, because the including and active supporting networks are really crucial for raise the voices of everybody. And also we have an example about a project that we've been working for already 2 years in order to build some capacities from those communities, and is also related, among other aspects, to prevent further migratory movement by offering alternatives into the needs of the communities. And this is really important because sometimes they are seen as individuals not capable of offering proposals and contributing for solutions that they are attached to their own needs and relative or situations, but they are seems to be used as a beneficiaries, and we are trying to do something in the opposite side, that the solutions come from them. So that's why for us the network and the support, keeping and sustainable support, is really crucial for raise awareness and make the participation as a meaningful. Because also we work with the social and environmental projects with triple impact in rural areas with internal migration, host communities, forced migration, and other elements that are interconnected with adaptation and social reintegration. And it seems to be working. So also we have an environmental peace project that I was talking a little bit before, where the meaningful participation and governance, climate justice, and the right of nature are addressed. So in the base or in the ground, there are many things that are currently happening, but sometimes it's not seems to be highlighted, and that's why we try to focus for building and make support networks that we can make a chain of changes for everybody.
Thank you for that, Mia. And I love how you left it off with chain of changes. And that is the whole purpose of network and the work that you do at SEEK, but also naturally as well, the work that we do under the PCCB network, more specific on capacity building. Bringing it back into SEEK's work, I know that SEEK is grounded on the principles of solidarity, collaboration, but then also co-creation of knowledge with people and communities. And I think, Bia, this goes back to what you mentioned of, and bring as well, of seeing these recipients of capacity, so to say, as beyond the beneficiaries, but also as active participants, and have this capacity building come from them. Would you have any specific projects where you'd like to highlight where you've successfully co-created capacity building or initiatives with migrants and refugees or the local communities that you've worked with?
Co-creation of knowledges is something very close to my heart, and this is one of the founding reasons that together with my co-founders Sumbul Bashir, we founded SEEK Feminist Network. We founded SEEK as a space for collaboration, as a platform for migrant and refugee women for co-creation of knowledges, and I would say importantly as a movement to build momentum and contribute towards climate justice. I myself personally believe in the power of diversity of knowledges. You know, it is very powerful how migrant and refugees bring a diversity of knowledge to the host countries. And these knowledges can play a crucial role to save and protect the environment. So at SEEK, we work at different levels. We work with the communities at individual levels. Secondly, we work together at community levels. And third, we work at policy levels through implementation of focused projects. And this is one of the key reasons for founding SEEK, that we work at different levels for achieving climate justice, but also raising and amplifying the voices of migrants and refugees in public policies and public perception. We have been informally working as a group on different initiatives for quite some time. And some of our initiatives, like you mentioned, are focused on climate justice and climate change endeavors. I would like to highlight the first campaign, our flagship campaign, which is I Am Because We Are, Our Climate Stories. It is focused on contributing to climate justice at individual level and at policy level. So for this project, we collected and shared the inspiring stories of individuals working on climate change and saving the environment. And we co-created this knowledge, but also disseminated this knowledge within communities, our network, and with wider public via social media. And we also held expert talks with climate change experts on reasons and possible solutions to the effects of climate change. And thirdly, at policy level, we produce the policy briefs that inform our advocacy campaign, which is aimed at promoting climate justice. And I would also like to highlight our very recent project, which is Coffee Tables Feminist Leadership for Climate Justice. During community conversations, like you mentioned, co-creation of knowledge. So at SEEK, we always work with the community where we identify the social problem together with the community, and we propose response to that social problem in collaboration with the community. And during one of those community conversations, but also at high level engagements, we identified the need and crucial significance of providing the missing link, that is the feminist leadership. We have seen that there have been governments and international organizations at the big conferences like COP, but feminist leadership has been something that's missing. So we identified this project, and we identified and named this project as Feminist Leadership for Climate Change. And we started the Coffee Tables. COFE stands for Co-Creating Feminist Tables. This initiative aims to and has been working to give the microphone to the women, to the migrant and refugee women, but also to the activists, advocates, and effectees of climate change. Following SDG 13, we invited 13 feminist leaders to dialogue tables in our online panel discussions. And based on the recommendations of these feminist leaders, we developed policy briefs. These policy briefs provide input and inform our advocacy campaign for the coffee tables projects. And with these recommendations, and thanks to PCCB, SEEK participated in COP28 and also in other international forums to take the perspectives and recommendations of feminist leaders into the policy dialogues and tables for climate change. It's a similar initiative, I would say, to amplify the voices and perspective of women displaced due to the effects of climate change, but also the feminist leaders, who are advocates, who are activists, and who are themselves affected by climate change. With coffee tables, we contribute to bringing feminist leadership and feminist perspective to the climate change discourse, where it is discussed, but also the decisions to combat, to mitigate climate change are made. So in this way, this project has made significant outcomes. We have been able to gain support of some network members, but also many people have joined our movement, and we are building momentum to take it further in the coming months.
I think it's inspiring to hear the journey and the fantastic work that SEEK's already doing. And like you've been mentioning as well, giving the microphone to women and really putting humanity at the core of climate change, because that's what it is. And the thing that really goes back to the human rights based approaches that SEEK very much tries to integrate in its work, but also in our subdivision as well, that we try to integrate into capacity building efforts. We're very much grateful that we could have you at COP28 at the Capacity Building Hub and have that space to, again, beyond compiling on these cell sites and these voices, how are those tangibly translated into policy outcomes, and make sure that the voices of female migrants and refugees, those displaced by climate change, are not only amplified, but are really integrated. But going back on this element of collaboration, I'd love to hear if Pia, if you have any insights as well, and how do these solutions can be upscaled, or some of these collaborations, and if you've had any cases as well where you've, or through partnerships, if you've been able to amplify your work and to really empower some of these communities.
Yeah, definitely. There is something that I received recently, good news and information about it. So we are working in the strengthening the partnerships and fostering the natural connections of our common work. So as well as actively seeking for additional collaboration also are crucial to step further to enhance all the project's impact. So this partnership will not only amplify the reach of the project, but also will contribute to build a more resilient and peaceful future for the communities, also worldwide, because the particularity of many of the works can be adapted, also has the ability, the ability to be replicated in other countries. So recently, I received a call from Amazonian countries, which is one of my colleagues are currently in those areas. So she called me and she was really excited and surprised, because despite some of those areas are really difficult to access, they were aware of the environmental peace project we have. They also wanted to participate, so we are looking forward to have more connections among our work and also expand the capacities and the network. And also it was unexpected, because we were just wondering that this will take a little bit of a while, but it was really soon for us. So it's really gratifying to hear about it by the first hand. And I'm sure that those cases are really happening in all over the globe, because all the women are working together with their communities, with their knowledge, putting everything on the ground in order to bring solutions for everybody. So I'm so happy to being here, also have this partnership with Umbreen, and yeah, this is space that for sure will help to reinforce all this job and build more capacity and bring also awareness of the activities that are happening currently on the ground.
Capacity building can oftentimes be seen as one-off capacity building. So in your work and on your experience, how can we make sure that capacities are built over time and in the long run, and or once those capacities built as well, how are those capacities retained?
Yeah, I think it's crucial to provide tools, because those people already have capacity, because many affected areas are like, for example, in this case, some communities has their own history in some lands, and they know perfectly how to live and how to be in there, but with the extra problems or needs, they need to have some or take some tools. So by this way, also there is a pilot program that began working with women from also indigenous community, where we offer tools, allow them to expand the creation of their traditional craft and innovate. So they took those tools, and after some time, because of the pollution of the area they were living, some of the children, I could say about 8 children, they became ill. So afterwards they used those tools to create new products, and they could be able to buy medicine for them. And this is a case of a study that by small tools, by specific needs, when you know the problems are, they are capable to communicate, we can connect and we can provide solutions that could be sustainable for the future. However, you cannot give them guarantees that you will fix their problems, because this is a deeper root and is completely out of our hands. But something is in our hands, is provide some tools and new maybe ideas in the case of the people where they are affected deeply by stress or any situation that put them in the vulnerability side. So this is a little bit of contribution, and we hope to have more information in the future, and of course we will share it with you.
Unfortunately, we're running to the end of this episode, the podcast, but I would love to hear your insights, Umbreen, on the topic.
I will be brief. I would say that knowledges are already there. It's just the tools, as Pia mentioned, but also sometimes, trainings for migrant and refugee women, because like I mentioned, the context is different, the society, the weather, the conditions in the host country are different. So skill development and trainings, I think, are very important in capacity building, but also enabling environment. And I would say that this can be achieved in many ways, but having a network plays a big role in this. Partnerships are very important, because one organization and one alone, you cannot do everything.
Absolutely, thank you for that, and rightfully so. And I'd like to give the opportunity to both of you to share any messages, takeaways, or call to actions that you'd like to share with our listeners.
Thank you, Eva. Then I would like to leave with the thought that migrants and refugees bring a diversity of knowledges, attitudes, and practices that have worked for them in their home context. They need the knowledges and capacity building to respond to the environment and climate challenges in the host countries. And it is very crucial to provide this support. And in this journey, we as organizations bridging the gap, and for example, the networks can play a role, provide them this support.
I will just say, just try to be part of that chain of change and make a space for others and connect with others and work with others, because we are part of this, and we are trying to close the gaps between our differences, but also by many things in common, that is the well-being of everybody. So I just invite you to continue creating spaces and strengthen our capacity and working together and exchange information. And thank you so much.
On that note, I'd like to invite all the listeners to join the movement towards climate justice. And like I mentioned, human rights approach is the only way. Please join our social media, stay connected, and let's do this together.
Absolutely. Thank you both. And I'd like to leave it at that. Very powerful message. But thank you both again for sharing your knowledge, your expertise, your work, but mostly your stories and your presence. Again, this episode has been extremely informative for me personally, but I'm sure for the listeners as well. And we hope to see you all in the next episode. Thank you.